Thuras is co-founder of Atlas Obscura, and today he will be sharing his insights on empowering locals and visitors to shed the light on the special things around each one of your destinations. So let's welcome Dylan to the stage.
Thank you so much for having me here. I'm incredibly excited to talk to you all. First, I have a little bit of business to take care of. I wanted to thank all of you who entered your local hidden gems in this little contest that we've been running with Atlas Obscura and Miles. We got some incredible submissions, a hidden speakeasy in Savannah, this incredible limestone cathedral cave in Bermuda that you can swim in. So thank you for suggesting those, and we're going to be announcing the winners of that little competition this Friday. So I'm Dylan Thuras, and I'm the co-founder of Atlas Obscura. And I grew up in the Midwest. I grew up in Minneapolis, Minnesota, which is an incredible city, wonderful place, yes, Minneapolis. And when I was a kid, in true Midwestern fashion, my parents took me on these endless road trips, these 7 hours between stops kind of road trips. And we saw some great pieces of American weirdness, the Corn Palace in South Dakota, Wall Drug. But when I was 12, we went to a place that kind of changed the trajectory of my life. It's a place in Spring Green, Wisconsin, called the House on the Rock. Yes, yes, if you are not familiar, whew, buddy. Okay, so, at first, it kind of seemed like a normal place. The rumor was that it had been built by an architect spurned by Frank Lloyd Wright, told that he wouldn't hire him to build a chicken coop or a cheese crate. And so he went and built this strange house, this kind of Frank Lloyd wrong, if you will. But when we actually left the house, 6 hours later, which is how long it takes to go through, I was never the same again. Because inside this sprawling collection, among the rooms of dolls and the self-playing instruments, are the world's largest carousel with the most diverse carousel animals, a room called the Infinity Room, which I feel is self-explanatory, and a sculpture of a squid fighting a whale that is the size of the Statue of Liberty. This is all inside this place. And these are only a few of the highlights of what might be the greatest piece of roadside Americana in this country. And so, these are the kinds of places, especially as a 12-year-old, that you remember. They come to be the stories that you tell. And so from that shell-shocked, amazed 12-year-old, it was basically pretty much a straight shot to this. So I'll tell you what this is in a second. So at Atlas Obscura, we consider our core mission, our whole reason for existing, to be helping other people find and experience this sense of wonder and curiosity, to get that sense of joy and amazement that you have as a kid when you see something incredible. So we do this in a few ways. We throw events all over the country. We have event chapters in now 8 different cities. This is one we threw in New York at the Explorers Club. It was a sleepover, so everyone got to go and handle the artifacts. We take people on international trips. So this is a trip that I recently went on with a small group to Bulgaria. This is a place called Budludza Monument. It is the greatest abandoned communist monument in the world. And if you don't know, that's a rich category. It genuinely is. And we published a book this last fall. And this was our attempt to distill our ethos and some of our favorite places, basically our favorite 700 places, down into an object you could hold in your hands, open up, and experience some wonder and surprise on every page. And it covers the whole world. And so these are some of the ways we do this. But most importantly, we are a database of 11,000 unusual, unique, fascinating places all over the world. And they're all submitted to us by our users, by our community of 200,000 explorers, travelers, armed trail travelers, and then we vet them and publish them. And so this is at the heart of Atlas Obscura. So what is an Atlas Obscura place? Well, one example I like is that the Eiffel Tower wouldn't make it, obviously, not very obscura, but the secret apartment at the top of the Eiffel Tower that Eiffel built so he could entertain the likes of Edison and they could sit and drink tea and look out across the city, that's a good example of an Atlas Obscura place. Another few of my favorites are, this is a place called the Keshuachaka, or the Last Incan Bridge. And so every year, the 4 local towns that live around the Queso-Chaca, and this is about 4 hours outside of Cusco in Peru, come together, they cut down the old bridge, and they weave a new bridge entirely by hand and out of grass. And they've been making this bridge in this exact same way since the Incan Empire. It's an unbroken piece of cultural heritage and history going straight back to the Incan Empire. So it's incredible for many reasons. This is a place in Turkmenistan called the Gates of Hell. In 1971, a group of Soviet petroleum geologists went to the desert in Turkmenistan to drill for natural gas. And they found it, and they set up their rig. But as soon as they punched in through the crust of the desert, the entire thing opened up. They had set up over a huge chasm. And so the drilling rig fell in, and they had this 300-foot hole. And they had another problem, which is that the hole was leaking deadly natural gas. So they did what I think they felt was the sensible thing. They lit the hole on fire. Presumably, they thought it would burn for a few weeks, a few months. It's been on fire for 45 years. This is one of my favorite places. And here's an example of one of the early entries we got into Atlas Obscura right after we launched the site. So this is in the Cherrapunji region of India, and it's one of the wettest regions in the world. And wood bridges basically just rot and fall apart. So this is a solution to that. This is an example of a root bridge, where the roots of 2 rubber trees are grown together over a period of 15 years, knit together and create these incredibly strong bridges. And when the user wrote in, he was lamenting because he basically said these were falling apart, there was no tourism industry around them, and cable steel bridges were being put up instead. Since then, luckily, partially because of us, when we found out about this, there's almost nothing on the internet about these. It's become, there's a tourist destination around them, they're being supported, and they're actually building another double-decker root bridge like this. And it's 2 decks because that bottom one gets completely submerged during the rainy season. So these are examples of some Atlas Obscura places. But at this point, you may be asking yourself, why should any of this matter to the people in this room? They're delightfully strange and amazing locations. They're wonderful. But what does it have to do with you guys? So this is where I lay out my case. Tourism is changing, and it's changing quickly, or as one of the panels here said, it's changed. Travelers are hyper-informed. They check 40 sources. They check print. They check web. They are increasingly mobile first. And social media is also encouraging people to seek really unique experiences. And so I think it's not just enough for a lot of travelers to just go anymore. They're looking for deeper experiences, and they want to share these stories. But most travelers aren't they're not popping off to Turkmenistan or even to India. Most travelers are staying here. 85% of vacations were domestic last year, and road trips also grew by 20%. And I think this actually creates a kind of a sweet spot. And that sweet spot, so you have this paradox, rather, which is that you have these hyper-informed travelers wanting these amazing experiences, but they're staying here. They're driving, to 100 miles, 200 miles to a state over. And so the sweet spot is the backyard wonder, of which there are many, and many are deeply underappreciated. I'll run through a few of them really quickly. So Wyoming, you have a place called the Smith Mansion, built by Lee Smith. It is one of these great pieces of outsider architecture. He's since passed away, but his daughter is working to preserve this, and it's incredible and not very well known. In Mississippi, you guys have the Mississippi River Basin model. This is one of the greatest pieces of engineering ever created. It is a scale model of the entire Mississippi River Basin that has 8 miles of little streams in it, takes up 200 acres, and was created by the US Army Corps of Engineers, where they would pull a switch and flood the whole thing. It's now abandoned in Jackson, Mississippi, and just waiting for a comeback. And New Mexico, you have Raw Paulette's caves. Raw Paulette is an artist who found his medium late in life. It's entire caves. He has carved 14 limestone caves across New Mexico and created these incredible, unbelievable experiences. These are kinds of places, I could go on and on. I feel like, when I do this, I feel a little bit like Jimmy Stewart in the bank scene where he's like, the wonders, it's not here, it's in your house, in your house. Every single one of you has something like this in your own backyard. But you have to tell their stories. So I'm going to tell you give you an example of a surprising success story. This is the Clown Motel. This is a clown-themed motel filled with hundreds and hundreds of clowns on the edge of the desert in Nevada. And just in case that's not enough, its next-door neighbor is an abandoned turn-of-the-century graveyard, which has little hand-done plaques that say things like, killed in a gunfight or lost will to live. So this is 4 hours outside of Las Vegas, and this has been there since the 90s. You know, and for most of its life, it was just sort of a $30 a night motel that bikers and truckers stayed at. And then the internet found it, and its story started to be told, and something interesting happened. People started making pilgrimages to the Clown Motel. And it's been growing and growing over the last few years. I actually called the Clown Motel, and it's an informal number, but I said, you know, have you seen an increase in traffic over the last 5 years? And they said, like 10 times over. And the point is that wonders can be found anywhere and everywhere. And as one of the people who wrote on their Instagram, they said, no road trip is complete without a selfie at the Clown Motel. In fact, one guy launched a Kickstarter, raised $10,000, and spent a month living at the Clown Motel. And I bring this up for a few reasons. So one, this represents those domestic car-oriented trips. Two, it took having its story told. It took being discovered and going from just a weird motel on the edge of the desert to being the Clown Motel and having this kind of great framing around it. And finally, if a clown motel next to an abandoned cemetery can become a tourist destination, anything can. And finally, the point is this has real impact. This matters to Tonopah. It's a town of 2,500 people. Those people who come, they drive the 4 hours outside of Las Vegas. They eat at the Mitzpah Hotel. They go to the Bug Bar and get a drink. It makes a real impact on the local places. And it siphons off, you know, it helps with the sort of bucketing. You know, not everyone gets stuck in Las Vegas if they're taking these kinds of trips to these strange and amazing destinations. So this is, maybe if this is my only point that you come away with from this talk, embrace your weirdness and you will be rewarded. Millennial families especially are spending more on travel. It's up 20%. They're choosing art and museums and strange attractions over sort of more traditional theme parks and things like that. And oftentimes they plan their vacations around an attraction. And all of you guys have this stuff in your own backyard if you're willing to sort of embrace it and tell its story. And then quickly, you know, for us, community is entirely what makes this possible. So for us, that means, you know, our community is sharing this not just for sort of likes, but they're sharing it to tell the stories. They love telling these stories and they love telling it to each other. And all of you also have a community that is excited to tell the stories of your locations. And I'm sure many of you are doing this already, but if not, give people a platform to tell those stories. They will share with you wonders you would not believe. And that's the only way that Atlas works, is that people say, when I talk to people about this, they go, oh, I don't know. And then they go, you know, there is this place like a mile away that I grew up next to, and it's a 16-story castle, and a guy built it in his backyard. And these people are ready to share these kinds of stories. So I'll give you one sort of final story that I think helps kind of pull this all together. And it's a place that's very special to me. It's called Gocta Falls, and it's in Peru. And Gocta is this tiny town in the middle of the Amazonas region in Peru. It didn't have a road running to it. It didn't have electricity, and it really needed an influx of attention. It needed tourism dollars. But no one went there. Myself and my co-founder went there in 2010 because something had happened. What happened is in 2005, a German hiker went to Gocta, and he noticed this waterfall there. And he thought, gosh, that's a very tall waterfall. I wonder how tall it is. And it turns out no one really knew. So he came back the next year in 2006. And he had surveying equipment, very German of him, to bring very precise equipment. And he set it up, and he measured this waterfall. And it is the third tallest waterfall in the world, discovered in 2006. Now they say it's the fifth. It's waterfall people get kind of like futzy about this. But it's somewhere between the third and the fifth. And discovered in 2006. And when we talked to the people who lived in Gocta and we said, why didn't you sing this to the world? Why weren't you telling everyone you needed resources, you wanted people to come here? They said, you know, we knew it was special, but we thought, against all the other wonders in the world, how special could it really be? And eventually we just stopped noticing it. We all live at the base of Gokta Falls. There are wonders and incredible places and stories all around us. If we just open our eyes to see the wonders in front of us, we can share them with the world. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.